Hey, Mike. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Nicole.
How are you?
I'm good. The sun actually came out. I'm in Olympia, Washington, so the Seattle area,
Yep.
and it's been very dark this whole winter. But
Surprise,
the
surprise.
sun came out today. I got on my bike and I rode my bike outside today.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
really cool.
big
Yeah,
deal.
so how many days of sunshine do you guys typically get?
Oh God! Oh, and then I'm new. I'm new to here. I'm a transplant, so I moved here in May. I moved here in April or May of last year, and I went through the whole summer, and it was one of the longest droughts in history up
Yeah.
here. So it was really funny because all my friends were like back east, were like, "Oh, are you so sick of the rain yet?" And I'm like, "I've had the top off my Jeep Wrangler for like 3 months. Like,
Yeah.
I've never put it back on. Like, it doesn't rain at all." I was starting to think that rain was a myth. Um, but then fall came after Halloween. After Halloween, it switched.
Oh, okay.
And so it definitely rains pretty much every day. But some days it rains more than others. That's all. Every day it rains. It's just some days it's more than others.
Yeah, I went to Portland, and Portland wasn't bad. Normally, I'm not a fan of the rain. I think because in Southern California, to me, the rain just feels really dirty. I don't like it.
Right.
But in Portland, it wasn't bad because it was just a nice drizzle. So as long as I was prepared for it, I was totally fine.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's not bad. It's weird. I mean, there are times where it's heavy rain. It's heavier rain. But typically, like, I know back east, North Carolina, New Jersey, places I've lived before, when it rains, it rains. Like,
Yeah.
you can't do anything else. Here, you put on a fleece and you go out anyway. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, it's not too bad. You learn.
yeah.
I'm sure you learn to live with it. It's not.
It's hilarious. I watch people outside when I consider it raining way too hard. It's pouring, and they're outside playing football, like with no jackets. Like they're acting like it's a sunny day. I'm like, I guess you have to do that.
Yep. Yeah. And you got to live with it, or else you don't want it to control your life. So.
Right. Exactly.
Cool. So, if you don't mind, can you just give the audience a little idea of who you are, what you do, and maybe how you even got excited by the idea of meditation or what your first thoughts were?
Yeah. Absolutely. So, I guess I'm your typical guy slash nerd. I'm a computer guy. I'm a programmer. I'm very, I guess, type A. I like things a certain way. I was a car mechanic. I played with Legos. You know what I mean? Like I'm an engineer, right? So
Right.
I have that kind of brain. You know what I mean? To give you that like kind of background. Like
Yep.
I write code. I'm always looking at stuff, trying to figure out how it works, and I'm also high energy. So I'm a very high energy, extroverted nerd, I guess.
Yeah.
And so yeah. So I mean, that's just been me, and I'm very driven. I'm very high energy. I just go 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 go. I if I sit down, like if I take a nap during the day, it means I'm sick. Like I don't think I've ever voluntarily taken a nap. Like I'm just, there's those types of people.
Yeah.
And so that's who I've always been. And it's great because I get a lot done and all that other kind of stuff. And but it's easy to burn yourself out, when you're like that. And of course, I'm the ripe age of 34 now, so I'm getting older, and it's like I need to calm down a little bit more. But yeah, I think my first introduction to meditation, it wasn't even meditation per se. It was yoga.
Interesting.
And I remember I was in New York City, and me and my coworker Tim, we'd always go to the gym at lunchtime, and some of the girls in the office would go too, and we would go lift because we were men. And the girls would go do yoga, and we'd make fun of them. And then one time they're like, "No, you guys should come to class. You guys should come to class." And I said, "All right, fine. I'll take an easy day and do yoga." First of all, yoga is not that easy. Like,
Oh no, it's not.
no,
Some classes are, but some classes are not easy.
I remember sweating so hard in that class and being like, "What? I'm not even moving really." But anyway, so that was interesting. But the most interesting, the most eye-opening part was the end, the Shavasana.
Yeah.
So it's like, you worked out good and you got, and it felt really good. And then you just lay there and it was just like, for what seemed like an uncomfortable amount of time, like, because we live in such a fast pace, like go, 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 go. So like laying there for 10 minutes with no sounds and no, seemed like at first it was uncomfortable. I'm like, this is an uncomfortable amount of time to be laying here. Like, what if people are looking, or, you know, what should I be doing, or this is a waste of time. But it just got to this point where I guess it's kind of like a meditative, now I would recognize it as kind of a meditative state where you just start drifting off and you start unplugging. And then, you know, when we got back out of it, I was like, I feel amazing. Like,
Yeah.
I felt like I had just woken up from a great night of sleep or something like that. And so, again, I wasn't sure what it was. I wasn't sure if it was, like, the physical part of yoga. I wasn't sure if it, like, you know what I mean? I was just like, that felt good. I want more of that in my life.
Yeah, definitely. So did you continue on with your yoga journey?
I did. I mean, I'm not a yogi, per se. But I mean, I definitely have. And my wife she went through, while we were together, she went through yoga training, you know, class too. So, you know, she'd always try out her classes on me and stuff like that. So, so I mean, so there was all of that too, you know, as well too. So, I mean, yoga's definitely been, and to this day, I still do stretches and stuff like that, which are yoga poses pretty much.
That's awesome.
But yeah, but I started looking for things like that, like meditative, you know, kinds of things. And I think, you know, lately, I work for myself. I've owned my own business for like 8 years. I'm a freelance, you know, web developer. And it's so easy to get completely overworked and like in your head about things. I started having physical pains and problems, and I couldn't sleep at night. That was my biggest thing, is I couldn't turn my brain off to go to sleep. Mm-hmm. And it's just a huge, like, and then I get a crappy night of sleep, and then, you know, I'm cranky when I don't get a good night of sleep. And so it's this horrible, like, you know, cycle that, you know, kept on going. And again, I always thought meditation, I'm like, yeah, that's for, you know, Zen Buddhist, and that's not for guys like me. Like, I'm not going to sit there and do a meditation. Like, I have things to do. And, you know, I would always do physical things. I'd always, like, kind of physically beat myself, you know, like go for a extra hard bike ride, or go for a run, you know, do something that kind of physically wear myself out. And that's how I would, you know, do that. But again, there was a better way. And, you know, so I started getting kind of interested in meditation. I mean, I've heard, you know, there's so many studies, and you hear so many, you know, good stories and success stories about it. But it was so hard to kind of get into. Mm-hmm. And I remember, of course, being a techie type person, I looked at apps and stuff like that. And there was this one app called Headspace, and they're very well branded, and it's very glossy, and the videos are great. And so I was like, all right. And they had a free, you know, 10 class thing where it was called Take 10. So it was 10 minutes, you know, so 10 minutes a day for 10 days. And I was like, all right, even I can spare 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I did it. I was like, I'm going to give it a try. I noticed, like, from day one, it was so hard to turn your brain off, you know, and, you know, they give you tools to, like, help, you know, redirect your mind or something like that. But it's such a weird thing not to do anything, you know, it's so difficult, but it's so good. I realized, like, after, like, the third day of doing just 10 minutes a day of the meditation, I was sleeping better. I could focus at work better. Like, I didn't get distracted as easily. I even started, like, to handle conflict better too. Yeah. Again, being a high-strung kind of person like I am, you know, I'd get, like, 3 emails at one time asking me to do something, and my head would explode, you know, and I'd be like, and, you know, but I ended up kind of dealing with that kind of stuff better too. Yeah. So it was awesome.
Amazing. So you actually started seeing results that you could tell after just a few days.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's instant. I think the first night I did it, right? And and of course, this is how hard I am on myself. And I think a lot of people are like this. I was like, I didn't do it right. You know what I mean? Like, my mind wandered. I was thinking about, like, what I'm going to have for breakfast tomorrow. And so I probably screwed it all up. It probably didn't do anything. I didn't do it right. But even just, like, the exercise of doing that, you know what I mean? Like, you start working your mind like a muscle. Yeah. And you know, it got to, even that first night, I slept better. Like, I was able to go to sleep. And it's hard, and I fell out of it a couple times, but you know what I mean. But I would keep at it. You know, and then on random days when I would like go for like a hike in the woods or something like that, I would purposely take time out to kind of sit there, and I love being in nature. So
Yeah.
I would find a quiet little, area in the woods, and I would just sit and just for like 15, 20 minutes and just meditate.
Just it, yeah.
And it's amazing, it's amazing. Yeah. And the cool thing is now I feel like, like this week has been crazy at work, like crazy. I have big clients that are all putting tons of pressure on me to get stuff done. It's like the perfect storm of all these things happening all at once. And I started getting to like where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to be able to sleep, at night because I'm worried about these things. And again, just using those, meditative, techniques, was able to kind of disconnect and, help my brain disconnect and do what I had to do.
That's really amazing. So you're basically self-taught then. You just got the Headspace app and then just kind of learned everything from there? Or have you ever gone to classes or?
Yeah, I mean, I've never, I guess so. I mean, and I paid for the, the Headspace app too, because it was like 10 days, 10 minutes, and I was like, okay, I felt some results. Like, let me invest in it. And it's a monthly thing. And I went through like more like foundational work and stuff like that. I got to the point where I felt like I didn't need it anymore. So I did discontinue it, because I was like, okay, well, I kind of get the gist of what he's doing. Like, but I learned the tools, that he did. And some stuff works, like counting doesn't work for me, counting breaths and stuff like that. So certain things you find out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and, all that other kind of stuff. So, I guess just reading around and stuff like that. I am pretty, self-taught.
Yeah.
And again, there's things like, yoga class, really good yoga classes that I've gone to and stuff like that, where they do put a lot of effort into the shavasana at the end, and they give you things to visualize and stuff like that. So, I mean, I can't take full credit. I can't be like, oh, I just picked it up, because I take influences from all over the place.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite things in yoga class, and this is what usually boosts an instructor's rank in my mind, is when they come around with lavender essential oil and they kind of like rub it over your face, and then sometimes they give you like a little massage, and that makes shavasana amazing. I'm just like, so have you ever had an instructor do that to you?
Oh yeah, no, I have a term for it. It's called the happy ending.
Oh,
really? I know it's a little off color perhaps, but I was like I'd always get excited when I'm in shavasana and I hear her going around and like, doing the temple rub, and I'm like, I was like, this is worth the whole class right here.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah. So no, I totally know what you mean.
Yeah.
I can't believe that that's what my wife learned in yoga class, yoga teacher training, that there's a lot of people who don't want to be touched.
That's true. Yeah.
And so, but what she would do when she taught classes, she would say, if you don't, I'm going to come around with essential oils. If you don't want that, fold your mat under, so I can like see,
Yeah.
Which I found interesting because I was like, who wouldn't want that? But no, it makes sense.
I think, everybody has different comfort levels. And I know, like, when I went to my first meditation class, for example, I was just so out of my comfort zone. I don't know if I would have been comfortable being touched. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think once you've done it the first time, then you kind of get more comfortable with it. But I don't know. Yeah,
sure. And I think everyone's got their own personal bubbles.
Exactly, yeah.
I'll let anyone in. Everyone gets hugs the first time I meet them. I don't care. I have the opposite, problem. But yeah. So that's really interesting. But I've never done a meditation class. It would be interesting though. I would totally be open to it. I'm kind of new at it. I'm. By the way, please don't think I'm some expert. I'm really not.
I don't know what a meditation expert is anyway. Besides, if you go in rogue maybe, but yeah. Yeah, so that's really cool. So you said you basically started on your own, and at the beginning you used to have this fear of, am I doing it right? Mm-hmm. And so since you kind of have been self-taught up to this point, when do you feel like that went away, or do you still have that worry?
That's a good question, yeah. And what's so interesting about like the meditation, it's not just a physical act of, doing it. It really is. It is a workout for your mind.
It is.
And you see somebody meditating and like they're just sitting there. I do that when I sleep, like, who cares? But it's so different because, because you are your work. And the first time you go to meditate and you realize, you're like, oh, just don't think of anything. How easy is that? It's extremely hard.
It is.
It takes a tremendous amount of focus to do that. But then you can't force it either. You know what I mean? You can't be hard on yourself and you can't force it. And I know for myself, and I know plenty of other people probably relate to this too, is we're really hard on ourselves.
Yes.
I'm my worst critic. And so, yeah, when I get those feelings, oh, I'm not doing it right. I'm not meditating good enough. Those are bad thoughts. And so you do in practice, and again, in my guided meditations that I've done through the apps and, stuff like that, they talk about that. They're like, cut yourself some slack. Like, if you find that the mind is wandered, it's fine. Just gently bring it back. Like, don't judge, don't, worry about it. And just the practice of doing that is actually incredibly good for not just meditation, but other parts of your life as well. You're like, oh, maybe I should cut myself a break. Like, maybe I can't do all of these things all at one time like a superhero. Like,
yeah.
So,
no,
yeah.
That's true. I think that's a huge problem, especially in our society, is that we have such high standards, which leads to excellent results. But at the same time, I think it leads to, as you've mentioned, burnout and people that just can't physically do that all the time, And so I think it does lead to a lack of almost compassion for yourself, because it's always just, I can do this, oh, and I can do that too. Yeah. Especially as entrepreneurs, you just take on so much, but then you actually become less efficient because you don't have enough energy to sustain all those tasks.
It's so true. And entrepreneurs are, I think they'll probably relate, that group of people, because it takes a certain type of person to do that, to quit your job and run your own business. And you have to be a very driven person. That's what people are like, if I worked from home, I wouldn't get anything done, And I'm like, I work so much harder for myself than I ever did for anybody else.
Yep.
And so, yeah, the problem is clocking out and giving yourself, that break. But no, I think you're absolutely right. I think entrepreneurs and, those types of like highly driven people, I think they can benefit the most, from something like this. And sure enough, when I'm in a very kind of chill state, and I feel like I'm working slow, I'm really not. I'm working incredibly efficiently. And so if I meditate at night, and I'm a night meditator, so I love meditating at night before bed. And so if I meditate, I get a great night's sleep. I wake up, do my little jog or whatever I got to do in the morning. And I come to my computer, it's like I feel like I just got back from a long vacation. You know what I mean? Like, and I just hit the ground with so much energy. Yeah. Where it used to be when I would like work until 8 o'clock at night, you know what I mean? Get a crappy night of sleep because I'm thinking about work. Wake up and go right to my computer to start working. You open up your email and you're like, oh, here we go. And if you start with that energy, you're not going to get near, I don't care how many hours you put in. You can put in 20 hours a day and you'll get more done with like 6 good hours than 20 bad hours.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit more about your meditation routine? Because I know you said you're a night meditator, which I am too. I love meditating at night for the sleep benefits, because I've never been a good sleeper either. So it's like one of the few things that will actually put me to sleep at a reasonable hour. So I love night meditation. So what is your routine? Because I typically do a lying meditation. What do you do? And do you still use the guided Headspace app, or now do you just do it by yourself?
It depends. I still do have the Headspace app, and I do, like, when I feel like I need a little extra, like, help, I can do that. I've done it enough now where I can kind of feel when I've gotten to that place. You know what I mean? Like, like when you kind of, like, you're like, oh, like, I have disconnected, and I'm in that good place right now. And, give myself a little time there and then come back out of it. You know what I mean? Like, so I am pretty good. When I'm feeling more balanced, I can do that a lot easier by myself. I do it in bed, but I sit up. I can't, if I lay down and do it, like I'll just go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, and I picked nighttime, and I know that's one of the things that the Headspace app, they tell you, oh, do it in the morning as part of your morning routine, and I've heard that from a lot of people as well. But I mean, I'm a morning person. I get up when the sun gets up, and I am full of energy, and I'm ready to go. Mm-hmm. Like that's not it just doesn't work for me. I'm not gonna take that time to meditate, and it just, I don't think I'd get as much benefit as I do at the end of the day, like you said, because you know those benefits that you get, you know, from that. It's a way to, you know, disconnect, because you know my brain by being a computer programmer, you basically turn your brain into a computer.
Yeah.
My brain is a computer, and it's always processing stuff all the time, and so it's nice to, like, you know, at night be like, okay, I'm gonna shut the computer down for the night.
Yep.
You know, and it's nice to be able to kind of do that. And so I get comfortable in bed. I do all my things. I brush my teeth. You know, I make sure the dogs are in, and just do everything that I need to do before that. And I'll sit in bed, and I'll either, again, if I'm feeling it, like I don't need anything anymore. Like I can just sit there and just, you know, find that space. Sometimes I'll put on some like background like noise, you know, like rainforest or ocean waves or some kind of white noise that helps sometimes as well. And then when I really feel like I need the help, I will do a kind of a guided one as well. And it's weird, certain days are, and this is one of the things I've had to get used to, because I'm so used to, like with cycling, like I get better and better and better and faster like the more I work out. I very rarely get on my bike and I'm like, oh, I biked like crap today. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. But with your mind, it's a little bit different. And so there's some nights where I'm like, I'm having a really hard time, you know, really hard time getting there, you know? Like, but you have to give yourself that, like that flexibility. And you need to say like, all right, that's fine. I'm having a hard time with this tonight. You still get the benefits, which is cool.
Yeah. That's one thing that I find fascinating about meditation is it's kind of like what you talked about. I think it can help you in so many different ways that there isn't one way to do it. And I think that throws off so many people. But I also think that's kind of the beauty of it. Because some people, for example, myself, I'm not a morning person. In the morning, I like to journal or do something like that.
Right.
But I don't find meditating, it just doesn't, I don't typically wake up stressed, you know, but it's kind of, I'm more like what you've described, where throughout the day, when my mind is constantly on, I'll do like a lunchtime, just a very like 3-minute meditation, just like a breathing meditation, right? And at night, it's so much better just to shut down. And so, yeah, I just think it has a lot of different applications, and I think it works some way for some people and a different way for others. And yeah, I don't know.
And that's actually really interesting what you said too. And I think that's another way. I think people have this misconception that meditation means that you need to like carve out an hour of your day and put on a robe and sit there and go and you totally don't. You know, like for instance, like if I'm waiting in the car for something, you know what I mean, like, you know, I don't know, like if I'm pulled over, something like that. But just like little things like throughout the day, even if it's just a couple minutes. And typically, what do? We whip out our phones. You know, we have to fill every minute of time with stuff.
Doing something,
Stuff. We always have stuff to do, like all the time. And so I'll take those moments and I'll be like, you know what? I'm going to do nothing right now. I'm just going to sit here and be a person. And just that, eyes open, awake, aware, looking, it doesn't, you know what I mean? Even that feels good. You know? And so it's stuff like that. You really can kind of do it anywhere. And I think that has been one of the things, you know, one of the tools that has helped me, and I don't know which came first, you know, meditation or hatred for my phone.
I love that.
Yeah, well, just realizing that it's like such a crutch, you know.
It is.
It is wild, because I still remember I was working in New York City when the iPhone first came out. And, you know, I was working, and the company I was working for, you know, they bought everyone iPhones, and it was this super cool thing. but that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
And now if you go out anywhere, people are constantly plugged in. Phones didn't used to do all that. Yeah. Used to be someone texted me or someone didn't text me or called me or didn't call me. But now you can do everything on there.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy to me that in how long has the iPhone been out? 10 years, maybe? In less than a decade, we've gone, you know what I mean, to where like and it is, to this day, it's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. If I'm somewhere and there's like a gap, I'm waiting. Mm-hmm. You go into a restaurant and there's a wait for your table. You know what I mean? Oh, where's my phone? Like, it's a reactionary thing, and it blows my mind that has developed over such a short period of time, where it's not even an option anymore. Yeah. And it doesn't it doesn't matter what age either. My parents do it. Mm-hmm. My parents are always on their phone. Everyone's always on their phones, and so it's so weird. So I kind of rebel against that. Like, I really try to keep my phone away from me. It's a great tool. You know, I have a new car that, like, you plug it in and it does all the things, and it's awesome. Yeah, I listen to Spotify in the car, and I can talk to Siri in the car, and, you know, all that kind of stuff, and that's cool. But I try not to have it on me all the time. Yeah.
I actually had a, like, kind of funny story with that. I went to get food, and my phone was dying, so I was like, okay, I'll just leave it in the car, because it had, like, 2%. So I was like, okay, I'll just leave it. So I go in to get my food, and what you notice is that not only is everybody else on their phones, so you don't really have anyone to talk to, but it's kind of weird. So I wasn't even really thinking. I started doodling on my receipt, and so I was just sitting there for a while, and then I was like, I feel like my food is taking a while. So finally I go and ask them, I'm like, hi, I've been waiting for a while. Is my food coming out? And they're like, oh, we're so sorry, we didn't put the order in. So long story short, I had waited like 40 minutes.
Oh my God.
I had no idea. I was like, not only am I that, like, my phone tells me time.
Yeah.
It's so bad that I barely have a sense of time anymore because I'm so used to having that as a crutch. So it is a crutch. It's
yeah, it is. And constantly, like, needing to interact. And I'll see something funny, and I'll be like, oh, where's my phone? I got to take a picture and post it on Facebook. You know what I mean? Like, why is that the first thing? Like, it makes me think, why is that my first reaction is, I need to capture this and put it on Facebook? Like, instead of being like, that's hilarious, I'll remember that. And when I'm telling a story to somebody, that'll come up. And so.
And yet it's kind of ironic because I'm assuming you use the meditation app from your phone.
I do.
So it's very funny, right? Because it's kind of actually what introduced you to meditation. Mm-hmm.
And like I said, and because I don't want to vilify the phone as like it being an enemy, because it's not. It's a tool, and it's an amazing tool. And again, I am a developer. I am a programmer. I build apps for people and websites that work on phones. And if I travel, I gotta have my phone, because if clients email, I can reboot servers from my phone, and it's an integral part of my job too. And so it's not like I'm going to, default back down to a dumb phone, like a flip phone or something like that. Like, I'm not going to walk around with a Nokia or something. Like, I can't do that. Like, I appreciate the technology and the fact that it's a tool. I just don't let it get to, honestly, an addictive level.
I actually really like the way you said that, because I think if we see it as a tool rather than almost like our hand, or I mean, for lack of a better word, something that's attached to us, I think that's a really good way of looking at it, and that it has functionality, but it doesn't have to be our everything. It doesn't have to consume us all the time.
It doesn't have to be your precious.
Exactly. I really like that.
Yeah. Awesome. No, that's what it was so funny when Apple came out with the Apple Watch. I was like, what's the point? Everyone always has their phone anyway. Like,
yeah. Just another piece of technology that people will buy. So.
Right? Yeah, I guess. But yeah, so anyway, I'm sorry, I totally derailed it from meditation.
Oh no, that's totally fine.
But I find it, like, on those times though. But I guess my point was, those times where you would normally, like, if people say, "Oh, I don't have time to meditate," like, even if it's something like that where you're waiting for your food or something like that, if you let yourself just zone out. You know what I mean? You do have time. You already have time. You're filling it with Facebook updates and stuff. Exactly. So yeah, that was my long-winded point.
Yeah, that's actually something I do when I do really quick meditations, like just throughout the day. I do it now, even if I'm driving and somebody cuts me off. Like, normally my reaction is like, oh, it's so annoying, or something like that. But what I try to do now is to take a minute and just take a really deep breath into my stomach. There's an official name for it. Honestly, I don't even know what it is. It's called some sort of breathing.
Right.
But just taking that really deep breath and just doing that even throughout the day makes such a difference in just my overall stress level. Because of course, you know, throughout the day, it's like I'm a little more stressed and then I'm relaxed. But I feel like that just does so much just to really even it out and keep it,
Yeah.
you know, in a very good baseline.
Which is breathing. People,
Yeah.
you know, it is funny. You think, well, of course I'm breathing. Yeah, everyone's breathing, but you're not really like breathing. It's always, and you can probably appreciate this too if you've practiced yoga, where, you know, when they're like kind of getting you into it, they're like, okay, unclench your jaw. And I'm like, oh, it was clenched. How did you know?
That's so
because
true.
we always we're always like this. And so, yeah, so it is. It's very interesting. And so, like you said, just taking the time to breathe. I mean, just today, and it's not like it's not like I'm some master of this or anything either. I mean, just today, I was trying to work with some other company's IT person to get a very, very basic piece of information. And I was getting snarkiness. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't working with me. And I'm like, and of course, you know, I'm from Jersey. So I'm like, look at this guy. And, you know, like, I'm going to like, I do your job with one hand behind, you know, and I got all like, I got all like fired up.
Yeah.
And again, and it used to get me in trouble. I would end up like writing a snarky email back and then getting into this whole thing. And instead I'm just like, okay, just take a minute, take a minute, take a walk. And that's when I went on my bike ride. Cause I was like, if I get into this right now, it's going to escalate into this ugly thing, and I'm just gonna take a minute and just, you know, relax.
And that's one thing I love about meditation, because even as we were talking about earlier, how people worry if they're doing it right or wrong. Mm-hmm. I think no matter what it teaches you is to be aware of what you're thinking and to be aware that you're thinking. So even if you feel like you had a completely failed meditation session and you started, you know, planning your future and you started worrying and, you know, say beating yourself up, just being aware that you have those tendencies makes such a difference, because then when you're in the situations like you just mentioned, you can start to become aware of your mindset and say, okay, you know, this is what I'm doing, this is what's going on, I need to, you know, step back. So it just gives you an awareness that really helps. Yeah,
absolutely. No, that's a perfect way to put it, because again, there were so many times where I'm like, I didn't do, you know, I let myself wander off and stuff like that, and we're like, oh, I'm just kind of in a, you know, I will say I got into a little bit of meditation has helped also with, and I never thought I would be like this, but the whole SAD, seasonal affective disorder. I've never lived this north in latitude. Again, I'm new to the Seattle area.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, the rain. You know, we talked about the rain, and that's always what everyone thinks. But what I found hurt me the most was the darkness. Mm-hmm. You know, like the sun doesn't rise until like in December there for a while. It was like I felt like we got like 2 hours of light and then it would get dark again. Yeah. And then even when it was light, it was cloudy because it was raining. And so I was like, oh my God, I haven't seen the sun. And it affected me. I got like, I got depression. Like, it was weird. I've never in my life dealt with that, you know, before. And, you know, and I felt myself just kind of getting funky, you know, all the time. But meditation helps with that though, because it makes me realize that I am, because it's hard to know. You're like, oh, I'm kind of funky right now. Like, I'm aware of my emotional state. And then you can do something about it, you know, like, okay, let's go out to dinner tonight instead of cooking at home, because just being out near people and under lights and stuff like that is going to help.
Yeah, no, definitely. So if you were talking to somebody who had never meditated before in their life and was a skeptic, kind of like you were, what are just a few things you would want them to know, and what are a couple things you would recommend to help them get started with it?
Oh, man. I mean, the biggest thing to know is that it doesn't need to change who you are. Like, again, I know I had this fear, like the meditation, like I was gonna, like I had to drink wheatgrass and wear a Buddhist robe and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, and none of that's true. You can be who you are and just, you know, have this as part of your life. It doesn't need to define who you are. And just, I would want people to know how much it actually helps. Like, you know what I mean? And even if it seems like such a small thing, you know, it seems like, okay, what's the catch? But there is no catch. Like, it's just, we work out our bodies, we work out, like, you know, we work out everything else. Like, why, you know, it is a workout, you know, for your brain and your mental state. So it just makes sense. If you walk every day, you'll lose weight and you'll feel better and stuff like that. Well, if you meditate every day, you know what I mean? That will help too. So it does make a difference. That's the biggest thing. And I think the biggest tip is starting small. Because again, I would read these meditation things and it was always this intense, like 1 hour meditation session. And, you know, it's just, I'm like, I don't have time for this. Or like, I'm not going to be able to sit still for an hour. What are you kidding? Like, and so I wouldn't do any of it, you know? So I guarded myself from it for the longest time. And I think that was the beautiful thing, the smart thing about the Headspace app is they did that whole free take 10. You know, so 10 minutes. Like, come on, you have 10 minutes. Like, who doesn't have 10 minutes?
Yep.
We've been on the call for like 30. So it's like, you know, who doesn't have 10 minutes? And again, I skeptically thought, fine, I'll do this because it's free and I kind of want an introduction to it, but I doubt 10 minutes is going to help.
Yeah.
And it blew me away when it did. I'm like, oh my God, that actually did help. And so it's really not about the time. Again, it's this whole measuring thing. Like, and some days I'll meditate and it takes me longer to get to that kind of place. And then some days I get there like right away. So it really has nothing to do with time.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So do you not meditate? Do you set a meditation timer or do you just sit until you feel like you've gotten into that deep state of relaxation?
If I'm having a hard time, if I know my mind is particularly feisty that day, I'll set a timer to make sure that I gave myself enough time to get there. And sometimes I never get to that deep state, you know? Sometimes I just don't.
Yeah.
But those are the times where I'm like, oh, okay, well, I still benefited from it, even though I didn't get there. I want to get there. You know, that's kind of my goal, is to get to that kind of deep state. And so, like, again, if I know I'm going to have a difficult time, I'll set some kind of timer, or, you know, it's like my background music will be like, I know that's like a 14-minute, you know, soundtrack or something like that. But if I'm feeling kind of balanced and it's kind of a regular thing, I won't set a timer at all. And I will just wait until I kind of get to that spot. And, you know, I don't know. It's weird. I'm very body aware. Like, I know when I've had enough and I'm like, okay. And I honestly don't know how much time has passed. You know, sometimes I suppose it's probably 5 minutes. Sometimes it's closer to 20, 30. So
I actually think that's another benefit of doing it at night, is that you aren't quite as time constrained as you may be in the morning. Because if you're doing it in the morning for, let's say, you only have 10 minutes before work or something, then you're confined to those 10 minutes. But if you're doing it before bed, that's typically a little more flexible, of course, within reason. But, you know, I wouldn't be mad if I went for, I don't know, 30 minutes instead of 15. You know, that, I mean, that's fine. So
yeah, and that's definitely part of it too. And again, because I'm on the West Coast now, well, you're on the West Coast too. So many of my clients are on the East Coast. So by the time I get up, they're already blowing up my email. And so I would feel, I don't know, I don't feel like I could give the meditation the proper time in the morning too, because I wake up and I'm like, okay, I'm refreshed, I'm ready to go, let's do this. You know. So
I have one last question for you.
Yeah,
so
please.
When you meditate, you've touched on this a little bit, but you said counting doesn't work. So what are some of the techniques that you've tried and just didn't find helpful for you? And then what is it that you do now? Do you literally just sit in silence, or do you maybe focus on the breath, or is it just a complete sit?
Yeah, so, and I think they have a term for it. It's mindfulness. I think that's what, and I think that kind of is what that, you know, means is, counting doesn't do it, because then I get obsessed with the counting, and then that becomes something I'm thinking about. And sure, and the other thing too is I can count to 10 and think of, you know, my laundry at the same time, like, you know what I mean? So like, it doesn't exclude me from doing something else. So that just doesn't work for me. What I find is like, visualization, that really works well for me. Just sitting there in silence doesn't really do much for me. Because again, it just, if I'm already super calm, I could do that. But coming from, 10,000 feet of hyperness, I can't just sit there.
Right.
And so I need some kind of direction, some kind of tool to get to where, a lower altitude.
Yeah.
And so, like, again, naturally, like, everyone knows their happy place, right? Like, everyone kind of knows where they're at peace. I've always been a nature guy. Like, in the woods, like, with birds chirping and leaves rustling and that kind of stuff, like, I can naturally, like, that's why when I go on a hike in the woods, and again, I'm blessed because we're in the Pacific Northwest, and there's, like, rainforests everywhere, and they're gorgeous, and they smell like pine, and it's awesome. But just finding a quiet space in there, I can meditate, no problem. I don't need anything else. Like, I just sit there and just take it all in. Like, I love it. That's my happy place. So when I'm here and, inside and it's raining outside and stuff like that, like, I try to, like, put myself there.
Mm. I love that. That's a good, yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of, like, I pretend, my mind is powerful. So, I pretend that I'm smelling the pine, and I pretend that I can hear the little stream going, and just, but I'm giving my mind something to do. It has to work very hard to paint that picture.
Yeah.
And then once I'm there, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm kind of chilling out.
Yeah.
And then just, like, the mindfulness part of it, where it's like focusing on, like, physical sensations. Like, okay, I can feel the weight of my hands on my legs.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I can, like, what does that feel like? And just kind of focusing on that. Background noises, stuff like that. A lot of people might think that those are distractions, but they can actually be a help too.
Yeah.
So, like, even hearing my, like, neighbor's dog, like, yapping in the distance and stuff like that, that's still, like, focusing on stuff like that gets me kind of lower as well.
Yeah. Yeah, just being in the present moment, and
Yeah.
even paying attention to the sounds around you, even if you find them distracting, just being aware that they're there does something for your mindset, because you're just really in the present. You're feeling and hearing and sensing, and we don't take a lot of time to do that, especially with our phones, like you've said. It's just...
Yeah, no, again, that's another one of those just very odd things. You don't realize that you're either, really think about it for a second. You're usually thinking about what has happened in the past or what you're going to do in the future.
Yep.
Very rarely do you actually think about what you're currently doing. And I've realized, that this is why I like things like cycling. Like, I love going for bike rides. I think because you have no other choice but to be in the present.
Yep.
Because you're on the bike and you're pedaling and you're just there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think that's why I always refresh after a bike ride. I don't think it's a physical, I'm sure that helps, but it's the fact that, like, I was just in the present for that time. I didn't have to do anything else. But you don't need the bike to do that. You can do that without the bike. So.
Yeah. No, I love that. All right. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. This was a really great talk, and I learned a lot, so I loved it.
Yes, I'm continuing, the journey and, finding new things. But I think that's kind of the takeaway, is just enjoy the journey.
Yeah,
like,
awesome.
it's not, there's no badge that you unlock and you're like, oh, you're a level 1 meditator. Like, just enjoy it.
So if anyone has any questions for you or would like to connect with you, is there a place that they can do so?
Oh, sure. I mean, and I have a podcast as well. So it's called the Grumpy Developer.
Awesome.
And my site's thegrumpydev.com. And so, you can check out my ramblings, or, but also get in touch with me there too. So I'm more than happy to kind of, chat or answer questions. And so cool.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nicole. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.